Hello, my name is Nancy Sharong Valentine, and I'm a Chinese American artist based in West Central Minnesota. Today we're going to give you a little tutorial on how to create your very own bamboo painting. I'll go through some of the materials and supplies you'll need, as well as give you some foundational Chinese painting techniques and brush strokes that you'll be able to use in this painting, but really you'll be able to translate that into any painting you create moving forward. Without further ado, let's get into it. What I'm showing you here is a basic Chinese calligraphy set that you can purchase from any major online retailer for less than $30. This set contains paperweights, one ornate dragon, and one classic wooden block shape, a small ceramic dish for you to use your ink in. This is a brush holder that I'm having a little trouble getting out of its case. A slate stone for you to be able to rub the ink onto to create fluid ink. And a compressed block of ink pigment. This is just a solid form of Chinese ink or sumi ink. Not all of these will include an ornate design on them, but this basic kit does. And your tried and true, some Chinese calligraphy brushes, also known as Chinese painting brushes. This basic set contains both a stiff brush and a soft brush. I'm not quite sure what the composition of them are exactly. However, oftentimes brushes will be comprised of some mixture of goat hair, wolf hair, or weasel hair. Chinese ink typically comes in a couple of different forms. I have in front of me what is called an ink stone. So what I'm doing here is adding a little bit of water to the slate dish that I will then use to grind ink off of the stone. Typically, people will grind these for around 15 minutes to get the desired consistency. Traditionally, these ink stones were made from a mixture of soot and animal glue. The other form of Chinese ink that I use is a much more contemporary formula where it stays in its liquid form. You're not able to get as pure of black tones as the ink stone, but it is a great alternative for folks who either don't have time to grind or just want to jump right into their project. This form of ink became really popular over the last decade or so, so you should be able to purchase it at any major hobby or craft store. Next up is my own personal collection of paintbrushes. I consider myself a contemporary Chinese painter, so I don't use just traditional materials. Right there was just a little basic house painting brush, and these are flat wash brushes that are actually made for acrylic painting. You can really use any type of brush that you want because it's your own painting and you are the artist. This here is a paintbrush made out of goat hair that I acquired in Japan during an artist residency. And this is just a basic brush that you can get from any major hobby or craft store. This is a calligraphy pen made entirely out of bamboo, as well as a couple of other brushes I acquired in Japan during that artist residency that are mostly short-haired and meant for things like stippling or creating animal hair textures. This next tool is dual-ended. One side is a brush and one side is a calligraphy pen. I'm really sharing with you this variety of brushes to express that you really don't have to have all of the fancy, specific tools in order to get started. A lot of the techniques that I'll be showing you today are things that, yes, apply to Sumi ink, but also you could apply to any fluid medium, whether that be watercolor, acrylic, ink, really any type of fluid painting medium. Next up is rice paper. This is not the same type of rice paper that you would use in the kitchen. And what I'm showing you here is that the two sides of the paper have different textures. One is smooth and one is rough. For Chinese painting, you are going to want to utilize the smoother side, as it's going to give you less resistance for each of your brush strokes. What I'm doing here is putting my paper weights down because the paper that I have is a little bit creased. The brushes that come with my set are brand spanking new, which means that they still have some of the glue helping them keep the form of their bristles. So what I'm doing here is just saturating the brush head with water to try to loosen up that glue. Now that my brush head is nice and flexible, let's go over the way you should hold your Chinese paintbrush. Traditionally, the brush is held using just 4 fingers, the index and the middle finger on top, supported by the thumb and the ring finger on bottom, like so. Typically, you want to hold your brush somewhere in the middle. This way it allows you to have control not only from your hand and wrist, but your entire arm. Here I show you an example of a medium width brush stroke. This can be achieved by using a medium to light pressure, but a consistent stroke of pulling top down. For this tutorial, we're going to be using a light, thin brush stroke, which can be achieved by using just the tip of your brush, holding your brush lightly, pulling with a consistent motion down. To create the trunk of your bamboo, we'll be using a side stroke. To achieve this, you still hold your brush in the same manner, but you tilt it to the side so you're able to achieve a much wider stroke line. You may want to practice this a few times to get the hang of it before moving on to creating your actual painting. For the leaves, you're going to return to holding your brush in the upright position, applying medium pressure at the beginning of the stroke, moving swiftly and consistently, lifting very quickly at the end. Here's a variety of different leaf shapes that can be achieved by applying different pressure at different points of the stroke. To create the trunk of your bamboo, we're going to fill the belly of our brush with water and dip just the tip into the ink, dabbing off any excess to the side. I want you to start off by holding your brush the way I taught you at the beginning, using just the 4 fingers. For this side stroke, you'll start with a medium, consistent, confident, fluid brush stroke. These are short to medium lines, all about the same size, moving in a relatively straight pattern. Here I changed the way that I hold my brush more like a pencil grip, and you can see that I'm still able to achieve a side stroke, but the quality of the line is much more wobbly, as I don't have as much control over the strokes as I would if I utilized the traditional grip. Here's a more dramatized demonstration of these brush strokes, utilizing a pencil grip. Now for the real deal. I'm going to be switching paintbrushes, but all of the techniques that I'm using are exactly what I showed you earlier. First, we fill the belly of the brush with water and dip the tip in the ink and move on to our side strokes. We'll use about 4 side strokes that are equal in length to cover the entire page for one stalk of bamboo. And then we'll repeat this process to create another stalk of bamboo. Once we've created our bamboo trunks, we're going to add some branches to the image. To accomplish this, we're going to utilize those thin, tight, light strokes. We'll use a pattern that is relatively equal in length for each segment, but you can really add some dynamic to your image by varying the lengths here. We'll continue using this technique to add more branches to your bamboo stalks across the rest of your image. To add more definition to our bamboo stalks, we're going to add little drips of black to the end caps of your side strokes. Here I'm adding a few extra details to my thinner bamboo branches. Next, let's move on to adding some leaves to the image. We're going to fill the belly of the brush with water and dip just the tip in the ink again. Using medium pressure to light pressure and pulling your brush quite quickly to get a pointed end. The swifter you move your brush, the more likely your leaf will appear quite thin. This is where you can begin to add more life to your image. By using more ink in some areas and on some leaves, and more water on other leaves in other areas, you can begin to develop a foreground and a background to your image. As you begin to fill your painting with more leaves, be sure to add a little variance here and there. It's alright if your leaves are a little wider or longer, shorter or sharper across the image. Rice paper will pick up the most subtle variation in hand movement in each brush stroke. So for a smoother edge, try to incorporate confidence into each stroke. From here, we'll continue filling out the rest of the painting by adding more branches, leaves, and eventually another trunk. Remember to give yourself grace if a brush stroke doesn't come out as perfectly as you had imagined. Chinese painting is more about what you can imply with your line work, rather than defining an entire image with every single brush stroke. And remember, the line work that is darker or more saturated with ink is going to be what appears to be in the foreground of your image, and any of your brush strokes that are more diluted with water are going to appear as if they're in the background of your image. little more visual balance to my painting, I decided to add one more bamboo trunk. I'm still utilizing the side stroke method, but as I create my segments of the trunk, I lean into the dry brush. I don't refill it, as the raspiness of the line work leans into the fact that it's in the background. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm able to provide this tutorial free to you because this activity is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through grants from the Lake Region Arts Council, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Here I'm adding a few finishing touches, but as the artist, you get to decide when your painting is done. I hope this tutorial has been informative for you, and that you may have learned a few foundational Chinese brush painting techniques that you can translate to future paintings you create. Thanks for following along, and stay tuned for future tutorials.